Welcome. What up is Marcus with Dynasty Football Dads, where we do Dynasty daily. We're going to be doing players 13 through 24. This is all in a Superflex league. We did 1 through 12 in a separate video, so you can find that previously. We are going to be doing number 13 right now, and this is going to be QB5 of my draft. So we did the first 4 QBs in the first round. We're going to be doing Mac Jones. So Mac Jones has the prototypical size of a quarterback. He's 6'3", 215 pounds. And if you look at his 2020 stats, where he really kind of came into his own, I mean, he had good stats. So in 2020, he had 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He was ultimately third in the Heisman voting, behind, of course, his receiver Devontae Smith. And so he had 77.4% completion rate. He was a really good quarterback. And if you'll watch a lot of those games, he threw a really good ball. He has a smooth delivery. He's really sturdy in the pocket. He can do some slight little okay, I'm going to escape pressure by moving a step or two. He's not super athletic. So one of his big, huge cons is he's not an athletic quarterback. And there's a quarterback a little bit later that we'll talk about that's even more unathletic. But realistically, Mac Jones needed a little bit more development. He didn't have enough time to start and to play. He reminds me a lot of an Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton has been awesome, and Andy Dalton has been not so awesome. But young Andy Dalton was a good quarterback at times and I guess produced playoff-type teams. So you really need to find Mac Jones. It'll be all depending on, will he be a backup? Will he be a starter? I think he'll be drafted in the first round, and I think he'll be even drafted in the top 20 picks of the first round. And that's where QB5 at this point in a Superflex league, you need your quarterbacks. So draft Mac Jones 2.01 or number 13 in Superflex. My number 14, and I can't believe the talents in this draft, just like 2020 draft, the talent just keeps falling. And when we talked about 2020, 2020 had all these different running backs and wide receivers because they had three quarterbacks, and some had Love and Hurts in there too, but those were almost backups at the time. The talent just fell. And so Rondell Moore, wide receiver 4, he is 5'9", 185. And if you haven't watched his tape, just watch the game against Ohio State as a true freshman. And these are his stats as a true freshman. 1,258 yards and 12 touchdowns. Now, why I don't give you his stats for the other 2 years is because A, he was injured, and B, there was COVID issues with Purdue and stuff. But ultimately, he's been injured, and that's one of his cons. Is he's had all these leg stuff, and then his size is pretty small too. I mean, he's 5'9", 185. If we're going to give a knock for Devontae Smith being small, we have to give a somewhat of a knock about Rondell Moore being slightly undersized. But he is a beast when it comes to yards after contact and yards after catch, yards after rush. I mean, there's some sweeps that he did that were just incredible. He's fearless going in the middle. One of the things is he's really good at route running, and he's quick. I mean, he's really good in small spaces. And the next wide receiver we talk about, there's a lot of comparison between Rondell Moore and my next wide receiver, which will be Jalen Waddle. Which one is better? They both have very similar size. Rondell Moore, 5'9", 185. Jalen Waddle, 5'10", 180. Who is better? Which one is going to be a better wide receiver for the NFL? Ultimately, these type of wide receivers don't seem to produce as well in fantasy as your typical X wide receiver. They are good for your team in football, but not good for fantasy as much. So in that case, that is why these wide receivers are where they're at. They're not in the first round. They're in the second round, and why they're down to 14 and 15. So Rondell Moore, again, watch the Ohio State tape. He is a great route runner. He has awesome quickness. He even has some power for being 5'9", 185. He reminds me of a Deontay Johnson. And if you remember Deontay Johnson, he had a case of the drops last year. Rondell Moore has had some drops at times too for how amazing he has been, Rondell Moore, squatting 600 pounds, just being a beast. But again, size, injuries, some drops. Rondell Moore, potentially a Deontay Johnson type. And in PPR, Deontay Johnson has been a good wide receiver. He needs to find the right team. So number 15, we kind of discussed about it already, but Jalen Waddle, 5'10", 180, 591 yards and 4 touchdowns in 6 games before he had an ankle injury. And then kind of limped back onto the national championship game. And I mean limped. I mean, you could tell he was having some issues, but he has elite, and I mean elite speed, elite quickness, elite yards after catch. I mean, we are talking about someone who is very, very hard to, very, very hard to get down. Like, if you're in a phone booth with him, you might miss him. And my biggest comparison to him would be Santana Moss. If you remember Santana Moss, very slippery, hard to get a hold of, really good at Jalen Waddle, really good in kick return, punt return, specifically punt return, has scored multiple touchdowns. Like, he is the guy that you want with these explosive elite plays. Might not be, again, the greatest fantasy player, but probably the most fun person to watch in college football right now. Well, was, because he's going to go into the pros. And number two, he's probably the hardest person to tackle just because he is so quick and fast. I mean, he is truly fun to watch. I mean, he reminds me of one of those elite punt returners. Number 16, we are going to go back to Kyle Trask. Kyle Trask is, again, prototypical size. We love our prototypical size quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, they love drafting him in the first round. He is 6'5", 240 pounds. He's kind of came on, especially with having a better weapons around him. Kyle Pitts is a huge example of that. Kyle Pitts has really helped out Kyle Trask along the way. But when you watch some of the film of Kyle Pitts, you look and you go, oh, Trask looks like he's an actual good quarterback throwing some of these really accurate passes. And that's what Kyle Trask is. He is a very solid personal footwork. He's very accurate, and he's a good pocket passer. And why I compare him to Mr. Old Man Rivers, not Young Man Rivers, is he is unathletic and lacks arm strength. And if you want downfield throws, you're not getting downfield throws. I mean, you could even probably say kind of like old Drew Brees, because old Drew Brees can't throw downfield either. So you are looking at somebody who had good stats, 69%, 4,283 yards, 43-8 touchdown interception ratio, but he is just unathletic, doesn't move. I mean, he lacks arm strength. If you noticed one thing, and somebody compared him to Josh Allen, and I say, how dare you compare Kyle Trask to Josh Allen? Josh Allen has a cannon for an arm. Kyle Trask does not. Not even close. Not even in the same hemisphere. So Kyle Trask, number 16, my QB6, but again, you have to draft QBs higher in these Superflex leagues. Number 17, and the man who has fallen maybe too far, we shall see. And we're going to go with the stats of last year anyways. But it's Chuba Hubbard. He is my running back 5 of this draft class right now. He is 6 feet tall, 210 pounds. So he has good size. He is a fast runner. I mean, we're talking about a high school track athlete, elite track athlete. So I could see him running into the high 4.3s. I mean, with 210 pounds on his body, you could see that. He's a one cut, like, I'm going straight forward. That being said, he is a one cut. He does not have wiggle. He also doesn't have very good vision. So you almost have to put him in space or design plays for him. He does have good cutback, though. He doesn't understand the cutback when it comes to vision-wise. He's decently physical for being 6 feet and 210 pounds, but he's also not going to be used in the pass-catching game, which a lot of these elite speed guys are, and he's not going to be. It is really interesting. Are you going to see the last year's Chuba Hubbard or this year's Chuba Hubbard? But at this point, you just can't. Chuba Hubbard has the potential to be, if he gets developed a little bit more, into a better, like a really good, solid running back for a couple of years. And at that point, you almost have to draft him here at 17. At 18, one of my favorite wide receivers right now is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And the reason for it is I love people that can separate and that can route run. And the reason for that is if you're open, they're going to throw it to you. It just seems like every single year, these route runners tend to slowly move down for no reason. And it doesn't make sense because they see these people that are super athletic or that can do contested catches. My biggest example of those type of wide receivers are Laquan Treadwell and N'Keal Harry. Those guys are awesome athletic. They can catch a lot of different passes. They have big catch radius. You hear these things. But you know what they can't do? They're not good route runners. They don't separate. So a lot of times they don't get the ball thrown to them. So you see these other Patriot wide receivers get the ball a lot. And that's just, I love route running and separation because when you ultimately can disguise your routes and be open, quarterbacks are going to find you eventually. And it doesn't matter if they're bad quarterbacks or good quarterbacks. And if you especially have a bad quarterback, it's going to be almost impossible for them to get you the ball if you're not going to separate. So I'm on Ross St. Brown, 6'1", 195. He reminds me of Keenan Allen. There's two wide receivers that remind me of Keenan Allen. Not a poor man's Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is amazing at route running and separation. But 6'1", 195, like I said, his cons are speed. He's going to run a 4.6, and that's might, I guess, detract some people. They might not like that. His athleticism is also not ideal. But again, those things, I think those things people can overcome. I really like Amon Ross St. Brown. I want to see what team he goes for. But he's my wide receiver 6. He's number 18. And if he shows out and actually is faster than what we think, he could actually move up. So number 19, my running back 6. Zamir White. And so he's a little bit of a mystery because he's had 2 ACL injuries and he's had some limited touches, but he is 6 feet tall, 216 pounds. He had 779 yards and 11 touchdowns in 10 games this last year. So he 5.4 average for the Bulldogs here. And he's a physical, but not fast, but he is a downhill runner. He is, I'm going to go straight downhill, north-south. And those sometimes are the runners that teams are always needing in certain situations, but we look at comparisons, and I always say he's like a LeGarrette Blount. LeGarrette Blount, you might go, he's not very good. Well, LeGarrette Blount actually had some talent. He was actually highly recruited and sought after until he had some off-the-field issues and on-the-field issues. And, LeGarrette Blount was something else. But what he could do is, even when he was a Patriot, and he went a couple other teams as well, he produced. LeGarrette Blount produced. Zamir White can produce as well, I think, at this next level. And you got to like Georgia Bulldogs, their pedigree of how many different running backs continue to just keep going out there. We got Swift and Chubb and Michelle. And Michelle even had a good year, his first year. So we got to think about that. And then Todd Gurley. And it just seems like every single couple of years they're producing 1 or 2 backs that come out of there. So number 20 is going to be my tight end 2. It's going to be Pat Fryermuth. And he is 6'5", 250 pounds, and I hate giving him this comparison, but he is truly like a baby Gronk. And baby Gronk is maybe not even nice saying that, because he is 6'5", 250. It's kind of hard to say that person's a baby. But he a little bit of cons. He has medical issues with his shoulder, and he is a poor blocker. But some of those things aren't super, I guess, worrisome, because I want him to catch the ball anyways. I want him to go out and do routes, and he is really good, again, tight end route runner. He's going to be out in the middle of the field. I watched him in plenty of crucial 3rd down plays, even 4th down plays, where he continued to make awesome plays for the Penn State Lions when they needed him. And an NFL team is going to want that and see that and be like, all right, he is a perfect fit for our team. When we have those 3rd and short situations, 4th and short situations, definitely highly recommend Pat Fryermuth. My next, I'm going straight into another tight end. We got 4 players left. We got Brevin Jordan. So Brevin Jordan is a 6'3", 245 pounds, so a little bit shorter, but he is more run after catch. So when we talk about somebody that is very different than Pat Fryermuth, 2 different tight ends completely. You have Pat Fryermuth, who is not necessarily a super yards after the catch guy. He's more of a route runner, got good hands. Brevin Jordan is the opposite. He is athletic, super athletic, runs people over, but isn't a consistent route runner. They both are at blocking. So Brevin Jordan, he reminds me of Evan Ingram. He had 1,300 yards and 3 touchdowns in 3 years at Miami. Decent. Had some of these times where he would have amazing catches and then he would have amazing drops. So Brevin Jordan, very inconsistent, and I think that's something that we do have to know. If he can shore up that inconsistency, I think he'll be a better tight end at the next level. But he is great in space, and he is athletic and can run people over. He is fun to watch. Brevin Jordan. Tight end 3, number 21. Number 22 is going to be Terrence Marshall. And he's a little bit harder to gauge just because we don't have a ton of tape on him. But he's wide receiver number 7. And so he's 6'3", 201 pounds. He had 48 receptions for 731 yards and 10 touchdowns. And again, he is my wide receivers that I just tend to knock down a little bit because he needs route running and he's not super quick. So again, what is he going to have probably issues with? Separation. But one of the things that he can separate with is he has deep speed. He can burn. He can fly. So that is something on a deep like 9 route he can have. He is a stellar athlete, and he does have really good body control and control in the air when he's trying to catch a ball. He reminds me a lot of Eric Decker, which if you don't know who Eric Decker is, then I will say Brian Edwards of last year. And remember who Brian Edwards was. He was a South Carolina receiver that went to Oakland, Las Vegas. I don't know, did they draft him as Oakland or Las Vegas? Whatever it is. They're Las Vegas Raiders now, so they drafted him. And so he didn't really show out this last year, but he also had some injuries. Brian Edwards, that is. So Terrence Marshall, my wide receiver, number 7, number 22 player. Number 23, I have Tyrel Wallace. He's the Oklahoma State receiver. He's my wide receiver 8. He is 6 feet tall, even 200 pounds. He had an ACL injury in 2019, which is, it's hard when you have somebody that has an ACL injury in 2019, and then we have this weird season in 2020. I really would have liked to see more tape with him. It'll be interesting to also see where he, like how his combine, if they're going to do like how the combines go, how he does. He's a great route runner, and he has great bursts in short spaces. So you know who I'm going to compare him to. He's another Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen just is such an easy person to compare because there's so many wide receivers that have those similar abilities where they aren't super fast and they're not super athletic, but man, they can have good route running and shortened situations, and they can, of course, be a super helpful person to their team. And he has a reassuring floor because he catches the ball a lot, and he even in 2018 he had 1,491 yards and 12 touchdowns. I mean, that's an incredible year for 2018. Unfortunately, in 2019, that ACL injury really bogged him down. 24th player of the draft. All right, we're getting close to like 17 minutes here. So 24th player, Tamarian Terry, Florida State. He's my ultimate boom or bust. I mean, when you're at the end of the second round and you're like, should we get Josh Gordon type, and Josh Gordon could be the amazing Josh Gordon, or we could have the Tamarian Terry to be somebody that just busts out because he's just too raw. But Zamir White is 6'4", 209 pounds. I compare him to Josh Gordon because he is big. He is fast. I mean, he has the talent. But I'm about to go through a bunch of different negatives here. Concentration drops. Poor hand technique. He's raw. Some of his route running is not refined. I mean, when we look at all that, I mean, this might be a project. This might be a project for a couple of years, where all of a sudden we don't talk about him in 2021. 2022 comes around, and maybe he starts getting into his own there. If he starts getting into his own in a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe this is the third-year breakout to Tamarian Terry, that's when you might start wanting to buy him. I could totally see Tamarian Terry off this list and a different wide receiver, depending on Senior Bowls and stuff go like that. I could see him being off this list. And in fact, this is a way too early 2021 rankings. There's a lot of things that can change. I could see 5, 6, 7 players being different now. But it's always good to have these people in your brain so you can watch some highlights. You can watch some different things and some footage and stuff. So that is my my 13 through 24. We're going to be doing some more daily things of top rookie running backs, top rookie wide receivers. If you have comments of any videos that you would like to see, we can go through those as well. So this is Marcus with Dynasty Football Dads, where we do Dynasty Daily. Please subscribe. Please hit the like button. Peace out. We'll see you next time. We'll see you tomorrow. All right. Take care.